Yep. Hey, everybody.
Okay.
We've got Mallory Roosh here with us today, and we're really excited to have her. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. You
I'm
know,
glad we finally got to do
I
this.
know I was really hoping that we could go down to St. George. That the plan was to go down there with the kind of camera crew and just record it and do something there, just right there in person, especially since you're in Utah. And we've been doing interviews and we're now globally and we're into Australia and Ireland and Canada and different things. But you're kind of down the street, right? In terms of,
Exactly.
you know,
We'll set something up. Don't worry.
yeah. Yeah. So we'll have to do that again. And you had the opportunity also to be on Good Things Utah with my friends there, and you was able to talk with them a little bit. And so people are just kind of eating up your story and what you're doing. And one of the reasons why I'm really glad, Mallory, that you took the opportunity to talk to us is you've got a lot of platforms right now that you're able to speak with, whether that's on stage with high schools or as you were on Good Things Utah, and more opportunities become available. And I think one of the reasons for that, especially as it pertains to like us with chronic pain, is a lot of times we will have people that we're interviewing, and maybe they have like a physical condition that they're dealing with. It could be that it's mental. We've had some friends on here that's got bipolar and things like that. And so, pain comes in all, forms, right? And you're actually, there's another individual that we had to reschedule, that's in Utah, and he has a little bit of a background kind of similar to yours. But since we've had to reschedule him, you'll actually be the first story of your kind, right? That we're going to be able to kind of get into.
What an honor.
Yeah, and why that's so important is because although there are sensitivities kind of surrounding the fact that people in the pain community, they know that there are some people that are abusing pain medications, and then that's making it difficult for them in terms of like the stigma and things that they're having to deal with and things like that. So whether it's that or whether it's just kind of your story with what you can kind of explain here, that still has to that it has to do with pain that's underlying with that. And sometimes that's trauma, sometimes that's you're trying to cope with different medical conditions, things like that. And so whether you look at it from a what some people would just stereotypically call just that person's just addicted to drugs or whatever, or whether they're overly dependent or abusing their pain medications. I mean, it's complex, but you really positively represent really any of those to bring kind of a face and a voice to some of the human nature and the spirit component, to where there can be a compassion side of that, to where even within the pain community, that that we're careful to not play the inferior superior role, right? In terms of like, well, my wife's got chronic pain and she's like spot on with all of her meds, so she's just much better than that person that's maybe kind of abusing it a little bit. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that is a very unique niche to be in. We've found, and one of the reasons why we've got the success that we've got people of all walks of life that are wanting to interview us, and we're booked on a weekly basis up until 2023. And so yeah, so not only did we find that it's an underrepresented area out there in terms of people, and what they're able to do. I mean, even with the Good Things Utah, you have a 5 minute segment, right? Or if you do a post
Right.
here and there,
Right.
how much can you get into with a 5 minute segment? Or even if you're doing a 3 minute TikTok post, there's just so much that you can do. And so having kind of a sit down and just having it be informal, sometimes these are 3 hours long. It doesn't have to be that, but it provides kind of an opportunity that people aren't having out there that really is kind of adding to them. And so that's why, it's a near and dear to hearts, as people are feeling isolated, they're feeling alone, they're feeling that they're not connected. And then on top of that, you come in and you're able to, interestingly enough, be the first one that kind of represents pain in the way that we haven't had it. And that is really important to Nell and I.
And I'm realizing on this journey that addiction is something that has impacted so many people. And, obviously as someone who's gone through, the process of therapy and rehab, even though recovery is big in this town, there's not really anyone that does talk about it as much as they should, right? Like everyone's scared to talk about addiction and this stigma as if it's this negative thing. And I remember when I first started doing this, I started posting things on social media platforms that were basically me being proud of, recovery, me standing out and celebrating these milestones in recovery. And I've had quite a few messages at that time of people that were like, take those down. Like you don't want to say those out loud.
Yeah, your reputation, or what are you doing? Yeah.
And in recovery we have sponsors, people that we look up to that help us through, the way of recovery. But they're all the people that actually stood to represent being an open funnel, an open place to just talk about the real and the raw of what people are going through, and not having a fear of judgment. That's all I want to be able to represent. Being at Bishop's for as long as I have, people ask me like, Mal, like, you're doing so good, why don't you quit? I'm like, I love this job so much because I get to meet tables every single day. I get to meet families. I get to meet addicts. I get to hear people's stories and connect in a very casual way, and in a way where I build rapport and there's long-term trust there. And that's what I think, this world needs so badly.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's so true. I mean, we cannot stress, and you're echoing the same message about how important it is to have it be, to normalize talking about it. I mean, I think it's over 50% of the suicides that we have are chronic pain related. And whether or not there's, drug addiction or abuse of medications, however you want to call it, whether or not there's a factor of that or not, people are basically in pain in a variety of different ways. And they feel like they live in a world where it's not okay to be in
not
pain.
Okay.
Yeah. And, to talk about it, like, can I, connect, reach, and even further than that, to, interestingly enough, be an inspiration.
Right.
I mean, I've got a friend, Chad Hymas. He's a quadriplegic. He had a bale of hay fallen at his head. He's a world-renowned speaker, and that's his stage, right? Well, no diss on him, but that there's a little bit of an advantage in the sense of, being an inspiration of someone that can see it, and you're going through life with a disadvantage like that, right? What about the complexities of what happens inside of us, so that you can't see, and then you start making them known, right? You start showing them on your face, or you start, and that, it's not always a happy smile, and you're starting to show a little bit about what happens behind the scenes, or you're talking about what your past was like and things like this. And why can't that be inspiring? And we're finding that it is, and more are finding the same, and eating it up, quite frankly. And so I think you're a rarity. I really do. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I have seen out there. I know that there are stories out there, but for yours to become as public as it has so fast, and then for us to kind of connect as part of it. Nell always says that her heavenly Father, our heavenly Father, is behind this in terms of helping people come together and having it be where it really serves people. And I really believe that. And I know that you feel that there's more to it than just, hey, I'm so special and I'm the one that was able to kind of, you know, get through some things. And I also know that you're not, putting yourself on the pedestal saying, hey, you know what, there's no risk of regression or relapse. And it's a daily fight, things like that. And so anyway, I just can't, express enough how the love and respect that Nell and I have. And I'd love for you to meet her, and I think you will. But, she does not just miss things lightly. She wants to be at every little single thing. And so she might pop here in the comments. If she does, I'll kind of say what she says. But yeah,
Okay.
it really eats at her that she's not able to be here. So I am so sorry. And
That's okay. No. Tell her that we are with her and we're going to be thinking about her and talking about her this whole time.
Yeah.
So she's here with us.
Yes.
No, she needs to worry about, what she's going through.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we got some things that we've got scheduled for Monday that we need to do. And so, yeah, that's the kind of the irony is that, the whole spoonful of sugar, and you just, you that spoony life, as they say. I don't know if you're kind of familiar with what that kind of means, but in the chronic pain community, there's this spoony theory where you've only got so many spoons in the day to give out, and they represent kind of what you're able to do and serve. And you have less than what, a thriving, healthy person would be, right? And so that's kind of nomenclature that's kind of known in that community. And so when Nell came up with the spoonful of sugar, that's kind of like, well, those spoons that you've got, there's pain, and we get it, but have it be something that has, sugar, in the sense that, give a gift and give service, find how you can serve. It might not be in the traditional sense, but
and find how you can use it to help so many people, right? Turning that pain into power.
Yeah. So with that, so that kind of sets the stage, guys, for you that don't know Malory. And go check out her website, on the post that we did on TikTok that shows a little slide that Good Things Utah put out there, and how you can kind of reach her. So if you're not following her on her social media and things like that, certainly go out and do that. And there may be people that are watching this for the first time once it's uploaded to YouTube. And so we're also sorry that you weren't able to join us here live on TikTok, but we're excited to dig in. So hopefully that kind of sets the stage a little bit and kind of gives you an idea of how that really beautifully blends into all of kind of what we're doing. And, I'm just going to shut up, and I want to kind of, if you will, just kind of take me back as far as you want. You don't have to share anything that you're not comfortable with, but, what you mentioned that there's underlying things that kind of led up to things, and then just your story in general. And I know that you ended up meeting someone that was just amazing, right? That took interest in you, your coach, I think it was, or so I don't want to steal the thunder in terms of kind of how that made a big difference. But yeah, just take it away and go back as far as you want, and kind of help us understand how things even led to that.
So, yeah, I've been able to tell this story in so many different groups of people, right? I've been able to talk to jails, institutions, rehabs, high schools. I've done a lot of public podcasts. And I'm finally to this place where there is no fear, because I've been able to see the people that it's impacting. I've been able to, wake up to emails and to phone calls with people who just can relate and just are so tired of hiding in their pain alone. And so yeah, just being very real and being very honest for me is very important. I no longer have this uncomfortable feeling of talking about who I was, right? In addiction, they talk about shame a lot, and how shame can take away all of our interest in ever speaking out. And today I'm super proud that I can tell this story. I can tell the negatives. I can tell the fears, and stand strong in those, and be able to hopefully reach the people that need to hear it the most. But my story really starts in childhood. My mom was an alcoholic, and my dad left when I was very little, a newborn. My mom's addiction caused a lot of chaos. Obviously as a child, we don't comprehend why people do the things they do. And for so long, I was like, everyone kept saying, your mom has a problem. And I never really understood what that meant, because she was functioning for a long time. She was a medical assistant. She would go to work. She'd pick me up from school. We'd lay in bed when I'd have nightmares. She'd make me PB&Js. Great mom and daughter relationship when she was sober. And then all of a sudden, these inner demons would get so overwhelming that you need a way to get away. And that's what alcohol was for her. I think that as a child, I call it cognitive distortion, right? Mm-hmm. So it's this false belief that's biased, and it analyzes yourself and life based on your surroundings, your influences, your peer pressure, your circumstance. And as a young child who didn't have a father, and, I noticed this in elementary school. I mean, it didn't bother me at the beginning, but once I hit about elementary school, I started seeing kids with both parents picking them up. And that's when I think I really started to realize that it was affecting me.
But your life was different, right? Like, look, wait a minute, something's not the same with my family, right. and that means, does that mean something's wrong, right? What's wrong with me?
Right, absolutely. So these cognitive distortions of, what's wrong with me? Why is my life different? I got obsessed with this idea of my value is determined by the love outside of me, right? By the people around me. And because I was missing half my parents, mm-hmm. I was broken.
Yeah.
So my mom, one thing that I want to identify with my mom's was this lack of self-love, right? Like her love was dictated through outside connection. And in her alcoholism, there was this yearning for connection. There was this yearning for love. And I definitely think that's something that I picked up on, and I began to carry throughout middle school and high school. When I was in high school, there was never a sign that I was going to face addiction. I loved school. Anytime there was a program, I got involved, whether that be yearbook committee, student council, National Honor Society. I was in the cheerleading squad. I was very successful, straight A student. And when I was at school, I was happy. I mean, I was away. It was almost this coping mechanism that I had picked up in order to make people think that everything was okay. And on the outside, I was really good at holding myself together, right? I didn't want to be judged.
The compensation. Yeah, kind of an overcompensating, right?
Absolutely. I just wanted to fit in. And again, like, I wanted to be loved, and I didn't know how else to do that other than think, how could a straight A student or someone be involved in all these things be a failure or be unloved or be unsuccessful
or unlovable, right? Or,
Absolutely. It wasn't until wanting to fit in and be accepted that wanting to fit in and wanting to be accepted became a big part in my life once I joined what's called the National Honor Society. And what that is where you do half your time at high school, half your time at college. It allows you to graduate a lot earlier. And so I would spend half my day at the high school, half my day at the college. And in doing so, I started gaining friends, right? I was a very social bug, very extroverted. I just loved making friends, right? Because the more friends you have, the more value that you have.
Feel, yeah.
And so I started hanging out with all these college students, and inevitably, you know, this is something I say at all my high schools that I want everyone on here to know is, you know, you become who you hang out with. You are who you hang out with. It doesn't matter. You know, I have this mindset that I'm strong. I can do it. Or I can hang around people that do it and never do it. But that's where that cognitive distortion came in, that if I don't do it, then they won't accept me. If I don't accept this beer, they're going to think I'm weird. They're going to see through this facade that I've worked so hard my whole life to portray. Mm-hmm. And so it was very easy to accept those things. And it really took a dive. It was this realization of, holy cow, I don't have to try so hard to get away from my pain and doing all these extracurricular activities. All I need is a beer. Mm-hmm. All I need is a joint, and my sorrows disappear. So I ended up partying. My partying went from one weekend to the next to every weekend. And eventually, right, this yearning for love was still there. It was still this heavy need. And with the college people I was hanging out with, I met a guy, and he was extroverted just like I was, and life of the party, and just gravitated, yeah. Right? Gravitated. I have a lot of people ask, you know, do you think the absence of your father affected your choices in love? Absolutely. I've always dated older men. I mean, not a ton older, but, you know, mm-hmm. even in high school, older. And yeah, I think it was this want to feel protected, this want to feel loved, and obviously this replacement of this mm-hmm. love that this little girl inside me wanted so badly. So this relationship starts, and it's based on drinking. It's based on partying. It's right. based on insecurities and built on lies. Yeah. So this relationship, I remember going to a party one night, and I was drinking, I was smoking weed, I was getting extremely cross-baited, and my head just started pounding. And this guy reaches into his pocket, and he pulls out this little blue pill, and he goes, take this. In this moment, I didn't realize at the time, but now being able to look back, it wouldn't have mattered what he pulled out, because I wasn't accepting the pill necessarily. I was mentally accepting acceptance, right? Yeah. I just wanted to, I didn't want to do anything that would ruin this love. This
interest. They're paying attention to me.
Exactly. Like, so I ended up taking the pill, and that became the beginning of an oxycodone addiction for me. I realized, you know, wow, you can numb a lot more pain with this one pill over a 30-pack of beer and a blunt. So our addiction quickly spiraled from that point. When you're in addiction, you're obviously not you. And this relationship got so chaotic and constantly worrying about withdrawal. And for those of you who don't know what addiction withdrawal is, it is a 3-day, very painful experience of your body just detoxing, right? Just detoxing all these drugs that you're forcing inside of it that it doesn't want. Once you stop taking it, you shake, you can't sleep, you can't eat, you can't function. You know, I remember times where I was laying in the shower fully clothed, throwing up all night. I'd be up for days. And, you know, the physical part is bad, but the mental part is bad, right? We rewire our brain with these drugs to believe that we're healing, right? Not coping, we're healing. Like we're just going to not face our problems and they'll go away. So I end up getting real deep into the oxycodone addiction with him. And eventually, I don't know if you remember the whole pill pandemic or epidemic, where Las Vegas, all the doctors started canceling prescriptions. They stopped giving out any kind of narcotics for a while. And at the time, we got to a point where we ended up having like 5 different prescriptions through 5 different doctors. And we were willing to do anything we had to get that drug so that we didn't face that withdrawal. That was our fear. That was the worry. I remember the day that they called to let him know that his prescriptions were canceled. It was about 2 days before we were going to go out there. And we were panicking, absolutely panicking. We called everyone we knew that was involved, and they either had enough to keep them from getting sick, or they just weren't willing to give away anything they had. So that was a scary moment for me because, I always use the term feel to heal. And we have to feel things in order to heal. There's no way around it. There's no shortcuts. There's no cutting corners. And I was so scared to feel that the only thing keeping me from feeling everything I'd been shoving down for so long, it was all going to come up regurgitating, because that's what happens, right? Like once we're no longer numb, everything just comes up and it's going to resurface and it's going to come after you. And the longer you've shoved it down, the heavier it's going to hit you. And my oxycodone addiction ended up lasting about a year. And with this epidemic, we couldn't get anything else. So my boyfriend's brother at the time, he was like, I think I can get you something to keep you from getting sick. And I was like, okay. So he ends up leaving, coming back a few hours later, and ended up handing my boyfriend this thing that I didn't recognize. It was a little balloon. I was like, what's that? He's like, it's heroin. The fear of hurting and the fear of feeling was more than the thought of, I'm just going to do heroin. So I did it, and I ended up becoming a heroin addict at that point. Obviously, heroin is a downer, and in order to make everyone believe that you're still okay, you have to, compensate. You have to compensate it with something else. At first, it was 5-hour energies, any kind of energy drink that I could do, and it just gets to the point where the heroin is so strong, it's drowning any energy you have. It's literally draining the life out of you. So my boyfriend and the people that we were hanging out with at the time, once you get into heroin, it's deep. You're in deep, and you're messing with people that you don't want to be messing with. And we started making multiple stops to Vegas. Our addiction became more dirty. Our minds became more twisted. Our distortions became more real. And I remember going into houses where there were addicts laying on the floor with needles out of their arms, or clothes off, or women getting beaten, and women selling their children, or giving up things that normally in your right state of mind would mean the world to you, but you don't second guess doing it when your addiction is your priority. And that's where we were at. Again, you are who you hang out with, and the more that I got involved in these people, inevitably I was going to end up there. I didn't think I would, because I'm that exception, right? We all think we're this exception, that the rules don't apply, and that has definitely been a mindset that I have struggled with in my life, is this defiance of, like, tell me I can't do something and I'll show you that I can do it. That it's possible.
Yeah.
So heroin addiction just ended up getting really bad, and I stopped talking to my family. My grades started slipping. And then one day we get back from Vegas and we're in my boyfriend's room. We have a bunch of our friends coming over. We had just gotten a new supply of drugs, and everyone comes over and they all start using. And there was this moment where I looked around and I was like, this is not me. This is not the life I want. I'm better than this, and I know I am. You know, I've always had big aspirations as a child, and I just didn't want this life. And I saw very quickly that the people around me were who I was going to become. And so that day or that night, I ended up telling my boyfriend that I was done. I was like, I'm no longer going to use anymore. And he was like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, you're going to withdraw. Like, you know, you're going to go through withdrawal. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, okay, whatever, kind of rolled his eyes. And how sad that this need for love was so strong that it blinded itself to any red flag. You know, I truly believed that this person was protecting me, that this person loved me. And so that night I ended up not using. The next day I was thrown into a very hard withdrawal. And while I'm going through this three-day withdrawal, my boyfriend at the time was just sitting there smoking, using right next to me, and basically treated it as a joke. Wasn't comforting, wasn't supporting me through it. So May of 2013, I woke up one morning about 6 a.m. and I was free. I was free of the heroin. I was free of all the drugs. I was clean. And it was Mother's Day of 2013. So I call my mom up. I hadn't talked to her in a really long time. I kind of had moved into his house, right? Because we don't want the people we love most to see how serious our addiction is becoming.
Yeah.
So I call my mom and I go, hey, Mom. And she had been sober by this point. I call her and I go, Mom, I love you. And I want to come home. And I'm clean. And she goes, okay, let's go to breakfast for Mother's Day, me, you, and your sister. So I end up getting in my car that day, driving over to a little restaurant here in town. And we had the best reconnection, the best moment of just this mother-daughter love and celebration of like, okay, like we're going to move forward this time. And there was no doubt in my mind. I go, Mom, I want to come home. And she's like, okay, I'll have your sister follow you over to your boyfriend's house to help you pack your things. She had a pedicure planned with her siblings for Mother's Day. So she went to her pedicure. I start driving home. My sister's following behind me. As I pull into the driveway, St. George SWAT hits my home. 16 SWAT cars surround me and grab me out of my car, throw me to the floor. They cuff me and throw me up against the street. And in that moment, I remember everything slowing down. I remember thinking, this isn't fair. You know, what are the odds that I am finally free? I'm going home. I'm doing the right thing. What are the odds that this is happening? This freedom's being taken from me, you know? And it was in that moment that I realized that just because we choose to do better doesn't mean that the wreckage of our past has been paid for. There's a price for our choices, and you can change your mind at any point. You can make better choices. You can be a better person, but to fully be a better person, to fully move forward, to fully heal, you have to deal with that past. You have to deal with those wreckage. You have to pay the price for your choices. And so I ended up going to jail. I did about a week in there, and I just called my mom and I go, listen, like, you know, I was going to come home. Please bail me out. And she was like, okay, as long as you still promise you're coming home. I was like, absolutely no problem. So she ends up coming in, bailing me out. And this time she goes, I'm going to drive you over to your boyfriend's house and I'm going to make sure that nothing goes wrong. So we end up getting there. She stands outside with my boyfriend's dad, and I go in the house and I open the door, and I kid you not, right in front of me in the middle of the floor was a little blue container that I recognized. And this blue container was what we held our heroin in. For a moment, I kind of wondered, like, am I being tested? Like, is this a setup? Is this, what are the odds that St. George SWAT doesn't grab the evidence they have against me? I don't get it. So I end up packing all my stuff. I lean down to grab the thing of heroin, and to my right, by the foot of the bed, I see a whole bottle of meth. And as I go to grab that from under the bed, I notice that our phone is still there with all the contacts of when we were distributing. And I honestly, I was blown away. I end up not really knowing what to do. My mom's like, Mal, are you coming? I'm like, yeah, I'm coming. So I just start throwing all my stuff in these boxes. I grab the phone, I grab the meth, I grab the heroin, I shove it down in the box. And that night I end up going home. I was in the downstairs area of my mom's home. So the very first thing I do is I take the heroin and I dump it down the toilet. No question, no worry. I wasn't going to go through that withdrawal again. And so that wasn't the problem. The problem came into, okay, I have no job, I have no money, and my life is slightly a mess, right? So maybe in order to get back on my feet, I could sell this. I could sell the meth, and I could make money, and I could then be done. I'm this exception.
Yeah.
Let me know if my screen gets too dark.
No, you're good. I can see the way that it looks on the live. It looks great. So.
Okay. So I end up doing exactly that. I end up contacting the people on my phone, getting these connections, making these sales. And again, you become who you hang out with. And for me, it was like, well, there's not really a withdrawal off meth. And for those who are, who may not be as aware of, the terms that I'm using, with meth, the withdrawal is that you sleep a lot and that you eat a lot. It's more of a mental drug, whereas heroin is a physical drug. So the heroin creates this physical pain, whereas meth, that's destroying your brain. So I start hanging out with all these people, start again getting deep real quick. Actually a lot quicker than I did with heroin, because heroin addicts, they just want to sit in their room and do nothing, right? But like meth addicts, they want to go out and be doing all these things in public. And meth gave me this false sense of like Wonder Woman, I guess you could say, right? It enhanced, it distorted, cognitive distortion, made me believe that I was more beautiful, I got more things done. It just made me think that it was enhancing what I was doing, enhancing who I was.
And all the while, and you're doing these things with this mindset and motivation that both the reaching out and the selling and the trying of this other stuff is going to help me get on my feet, right? You're kind of,
right.
Talked yourself into believing kind of the justification of, hey, this is right. This is going to help me so that I can get into a better place.
Right. Justified that it was a positive because, this is where I'm heading. But what you'll learn in addiction is that the drug is in control. You are not. And I ended up starting to hang out with all these meth addicts. And before I knew it, one of, who better to hang out with than a dealer, right? Like you're a fiending addict and the person you're hanging out with always has a constant supply. So I ended up hanging out with this dealer, and one night I didn't want to go home. As far as my relationship with my mom at this time, she could tell that something was changing. She wasn't sure what. I got very good at being manipulative. As long as I replied to her text, there was always an excuse. There was always a story. There was always a reason why I wasn't coming home, because I didn't want her to see the damage I was doing, to myself. And having blue eyes, that didn't help my addiction at all, because meth obviously dilated them. And so my eyes would be black. But one night my dealer says, oh, we'll just get a hotel room and then you won't have to go home. And I was like, okay, perfect. Like, you're paying for it. Awesome. So we go in this hotel room, and I had only been a smoker at this time. He was an intravenous user. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's using a needle to inject a substance. And we had been up by this point for about 3.5 days. And we used so much that we ended up running out. And your body, after so much sleep deprivation, it requires to sleep. So I laid there on the bed for a minute and slowly just started drifting off. Well, as I was sleeping, the dealer must have gone to get more drugs, because about an hour later, I ended up sitting up from this bed. My heart was racing. I was panicking. I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't breathe. And as I look over to my left, I realized that the dealer is taking a needle out of my arm that he just introduced meth to. And that way of using is so mind-altering and so powerful that I wasn't going to go back to using the way I was prior to that. So from that point on, I became an intravenous meth user. Crazy. it's crazy.
A lot to unpack. Wow.
Yeah. So within 3 months, my intravenous use ended up eventually getting me arrested. And I was charged with 15 felonies, between 10 and 13 misdemeanors. And I was facing up to 30 years in prison at the age of 19 years old.
Wow.
I ended up doing 3 months in jail again. I got the opportunity to be released into the drug court program, and I failed. I ended up getting released into inpatient treatment, and I failed. Come to find out, unfortunately, the inpatient rehab that I went to, this is another thing that makes me sad in the world that we live in today. Now that I'm aware, now that I've been through it, the rehab told me that I had broken too many rules and I had to be released. And so they packed my bags, put them by the front door, but they didn't call a sponsor. They didn't call anybody. They didn't call a parent. They basically were just let me go. Come to find out, years after this, my insurance had been canceled. So my opportunity, which at that time I really wanted. I was open, I was like, I had done it before. I had gotten clean before. I knew I could do it. But me getting clean and me being happy and me finding a life again was based on how much money I had. And, my mom's addiction, the one thing I remember the most was that we never stayed in one place very long. A lot of the time we were living in hotel rooms or the homeless shelter, or staying with people that we, would let us stay with them. So it was sad once I found that out. But I ended up getting released from the rehab just into life again. And basically they were like, we'll let the court know, and you can find out when your sentencing date is. And I was like, okay, well, my sentencing date was about 2 months out. And that just gave me all the more freedom to do exactly what I was doing, find the friends I was hanging out with again, and got just as deep once more. Finally, my sentencing date comes in. And should I turn that light on? Can you see me?
Go ahead and give it a go. Turn it on and see if that helps a little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. So my sentencing date comes up, and I remember sitting in the parking lot, and this was not the first time, but the most prominent time that I realized I had been considering suicide as an option, right? I mean, I'm 19 years old, and I've completely destroyed every chance I've been given. There was this this belief that there was too much wreckage. I was overwhelmed by the amount of people I would have to apologize to, the circumstances I would have to fix and heal from, and all the damage that I had done from the drugs to my body and my mind. My thoughts were telling me that you're too far gone. You're never going to come back. And you start believing them, just as I started believing that I wasn't worthy of love because my own creator didn't love me. I started believing that maybe suicide was the solution. And that scared me, because that is a full surrender to your distortion and to your bad thoughts and to all the negative that surrounds your life, right? So I go, what will one more use hurt? Either I kill myself, I run, which again, I'm going to get caught eventually, and this time it's going to be worse, or I can use one more time and I can walk into that courtroom and I can accept my fate. And that's what I ended up doing. I ended up using right there in the parking lot, walking into my sentencing, and right as the judge was about to sentence me to a prison sentence, they would have taken me right out of the room in shackles. The court doors behind me barge open, and this man walks in that I had never met before, I'd never seen before, and he goes, "Your Honor, can I speak to you?" So he goes up and he talks to the judge, he talks to prosecution for what seemed like forever. It was probably like 35 minutes of me standing there messed up, like stumbling side to side. And then that man walks out of the courtroom, and there's this awkward silence right before the judge goes, "Malory, I don't know what Chuck can do for you that we haven't already tried, but I'm going to give him a chance. I'm sentencing you to a 3-year private probation with a 0 tolerance." And again, a private probation is basically the easiest sentence you can get. You end up testing once a month, and you know exactly when you're going to test. It's the easiest part of the system to manipulate. So I was like, wow, like what just happened? I ended up walking out of the courtroom that day, and he's standing at the railing, and I go, "Hi, he's like, "Yeah, I know who you are." And I was like, oh no, this guy is very intimidating, had a very strong persona. And he goes, "I'll see you in 2 weeks." And I was like, "Wait, you're just going to let me go? Like, you can clearly see I have track marks up and down my arms. Like, you can tell I'm high. Like, you're just going to let me leave?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Well, what did I do? I did what any other addict would have done. I mean, you would have thought that since I just experienced this miracle, that I would want to change, but that's not where my mind was. My mind was convinced that I was too far gone. It didn't matter what miracles people gave me or chances people gave me. I didn't see it in myself that I was capable or deserving of any of them.
Yeah.
So that night, I ended up stealing my mom's car, going down to Vegas with like 4 friends, and doing a lot of stupid things, intravenously using, robbing people, stealing, speeding. We just were causing havoc. And we end up driving back about, I want to say, 20 hours after I had seen Chuck. Start driving back, and all of a sudden, Chuck, my phone rings. And I answer, and I'm like, "Hello?" And he's like, "Hey, Mal, I need you to come into my office." I'm like, here we go. I'm done. I'm screwed. I was like, okay. So I end up getting into town and heading straight to his office. Thought I was smarter than the system. Ended up trying to fake my P test, and didn't work out. Actually, kind of funny story. I stood up and gravity just wasn't on my side, and it all just came down. So I looked like I was a mess. I was a mess all the way around. So I sit there in his office for a minute, and he sits down at his desk and he grabs a paper from the fax machine, And he starts filling it out. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, this is what I'm sending to the judge. Like, you're done. You were on a 0 tolerance. And so he starts filling it out again. And I go, please don't send that in. Like, I know I can do this. I don't want to live this life. I know I can get clean. And he stands up and he bangs his hands on the desk. And he's like, what the hell do I have to do to get you to want to live? And that was a moment where I just broke down in tears, because no one had ever asked me what I needed.
Yeah.
The problem, he goes, why didn't you get through these programs? Why didn't inpatient treatment help you? Why didn't drug work help you? Because I didn't want to be punished into recovery. I wanted to be inspired into recovery. I inspired myself the first time. Mm-hmm. But throughout the programs, it was constant punishment. And all the punishments were doing was validating these thoughts in my head
that I wasn't
good enough.
Yeah.
Right. I wasn't deserving. I wasn't capable. All it was doing was punching me down. I already knew I was a piece of crap. I already saw that I was worth. I didn't need reminding of that. I needed reminding of the value that I held and why I shouldn't take my life. That's what I needed. So I told him, he goes, why didn't these programs work for you? And I go, because I want to be inspired into recovery, not punished. And he looks at me for a minute, really trying to see if I meant what I was saying. And I did, very much so. I go, I just want to be loved. And so he grabs the paper that I just want to be loved. And so he grabs the paper that he was filling out, and he doesn't send it in. He goes, Mal, I'm going to give you one more chance. And he goes, for the next 6 months, you're going to call me every single day. If I answer, we'll have a conversation. If I don't, you have to leave me a 1-minute voicemail explaining how your day went. And this is going to tell me 2 things. 1, it's going to tell me if you're high, and by how you talk, how your mind is thinking and processing information. And 2, it's going to tell me that you haven't killed yourself. So I was like, okay. People have asked me on prior interviews, what was it in that moment that made me truly commit to staying clean? And what it was believing in me. He saw this value in me that I was unable to see in myself, that my mind, didn't believe I had in this world. Like, if a stranger is willing to risk his job, his reputation, and everything on someone that he barely knows because he sees that there's value in them, like, the least I could have done was do the same for him. So from that point on, the next 6 months, I called him every single day. When he would answer, we had great conversations. He had the best advice. If I was having a problem in my day, we would talk about how to get through it. And I think he realized it at the time too, but what was really fulfilling me during this 6-month relationship was the fact that these were conversations I had been yearning for my entire life, right? This father figure, this person that cared about how my day went, that cared about if I was struggling, wanted to hear how I was feeling, and enjoyed hearing it, enjoyed being there for me. This selfish love and commitment to a stranger just was blowing my mind. But these voids of not having my dad were being filled and filled. And so finally, after the 6 month check-ins, I called the day after my 6 month check-ins ended, and I was like, hey, Chuck. And he's like, hey, Mal, what's going on? And I was like, oh, not much, just calling to tell you how my day went. And he goes, Mal, your 6 month check-ins ended yesterday. You no longer have to call me. I trust you. And I was like, any other probationee would have been happy about this. They would have been like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, thank gosh, I don't have to
Yeah.
do this. But it was heart-wrenching. Chuck had become my best friend, and the person that I wanted to tell about all the good things that happened in my day. It was a phone call I looked forward to, and I could feel myself healing by this connection. And so he goes, Mal, I've loved you until you were strong enough to love yourself. And I believe that you do see value in you now that you didn't before. And it's time to start living. So from that point on, I started doing exactly that. I started living. I got a job that I am still at today. That's beautiful. I get to meet people all the time. Have a few stories I can share at the end of this. I haven't shared with any other TV show or podcast. But I ended up trying to go into school. I've always loved school. And so I ended up going to this college. I always thought that healthcare was going to be the way I was going to go, because I had manipulated the system so much that I was like, okay, maybe if I have some power in the healthcare system, I can help change that. I can help make a difference, and stop these loopholes, stop, just like you were saying early, stop that stigma for people who need it, for the chronic pain, versus the people who are abusing it and making the people who need it look like addicts.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because it's just such a tie-in to what topics are needing to be talked about, right? And how you fit into all of this. So,
Absolutely. So I ended up going to the college, applying for the program, the Healthcare Administration Bachelor's Program. And as I'm about to sign the waiver, the girl tells me that at the end of the healthcare program, there's a background check. And instantly, everything in me came crashing down. I realized I was not going to pass that background check. And even if I went through the whole degree, 4 years of schooling, I wasn't going to get my diploma. So right after I ended up applying, I called Chuck and I was like, Chuck, we need to talk. And he's like, what's going on? I go, well, I'm trying to apply for the healthcare program, but there's a background check at the end. And he goes, well, how bad do you want it? And I was like, what? I was like, what do you mean, how bad do I want it? I want it really bad. But I was like, okay, do you need a hearing aid? Like, there's a background check, buddy. And he was like, well, Mel, I think you should follow your heart. I think you should go for it. And I was confused. I was like, this man who wants me to be successful, you're setting me up for failure. Like, you're encouraging something that I don't see how this is going to work out. And, but I trusted him, and he loved me more than anyone ever had. So I went for it. I ended up going into the healthcare administration degree. And I have this job I love. I'm in the school for this career that I love. I end up getting a room for rent with a man that is my husband now. And everything was going good. I was living life to the fullest. And my mom was sober and I was clean. And I was on cloud nine, right? In the addiction community, it's cloud nine. It's that early recovery belief that like, that was easy, got out of it. Now we're, in this place of healing and never have to worry about it again. Well, life was really good for a long time. While I was in the early recovery, I had a few instances where, I've always been someone who sees the good in people. And I was still hanging out with people who I knew were struggling. And in my mind, right, I was like, I can help you. Like, I've done it. I can help you. I want to be there for you. I don't want you to feel alone. I often struggled with this imbalance of like boundaries for myself.
Yeah.
What I was capable of helping people do. So pretty quickly, my husband now, at the time we were just friends, but he was like, Mel, you are who you hang out with. You are who you hang out with. Like, you are not stable enough. You don't have enough clean time under your belt to be able to help them do anything. Focus on yourself. So that was kind of an obstacle. the hardest part for me in early recovery was getting away from friends, because some of the people that were still using, I loved and I supported and I wanted to be there for. But you have to change everything. And I had already changed my home. I changed my daily routine. I started, rewiring and reframing and reconstructing my cognitive beliefs and understandings. I just had to kind of not isolate myself, but I really had to make sure I was very aware of the instability mentally for me. Also, during this time of being clean, a lot of my friends were dying. I remember this one incident actually where there were 3 boys that were some of my very good friends. They were more in the oxycodone addiction time of my life. But they ended up calling me one night and they were like, "Hey Mal, like, do you want to go for a drive? Like, just to hang out, like talk about how everything's going." And believe it or not, I wanted to. Like, I wanted these friendships. Yeah. And I didn't. I go, I can't, I'm sorry. And I hung up the phone. Come to find out the next day, they went on a drive. These 3 boys ended up going on a drive together. And one of them started overdosing. And as they were getting onto the freeway, both of the boys in the car were so scared to get in trouble that they ended up shoving his body as he overdosed out of the car and left him to die. And
oh man, I'm so sorry.
There was a moment where I blamed myself, because I thought if I would have been there, I would have been able to save him. I ended up calling Chuck and I told the story and I just kept sobbing. And he's like, "Malory, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And you have to remember that putting yourself first is important in recovery." And he goes, "You're sitting here thinking and looking at the perspective that you could have been the one to save him. But what if you were the one that was pushed? Yeah. What if you were the one that would have given in and been the one to die that night?" And he was right. That was a really big realization and really put up a wall for me as far as creating a boundary.
Boundaries, yeah.
That's where I understood what boundaries really meant. If you have anything to say, please feel free to throw it out.
So much to unpack there. A few comments. First, thank you for sharing and what you're doing in terms of just the courage and the vulnerability and the authenticity that you have. I know that so many people are going to be blessed by hearing your story. People react to stories in different ways, and some may not be ready to challenge any of their own bias of how they are thinking of people with a physical pain condition, or what you've just shared, whether that is quickly judging and thinking of the situation to be, oh, that person's overreacting with their pain, right? Or they're attention seeking, or they really don't have that pain, or this person, I hate the looseness that are even just among so-called good, people, when they hear drugs of any kind, involved with the story. The irony is that the pain that's underlying that caused that was the not feeling worth, right? And having, all the, and to react to that as, let me just add to that, let me think less of that, even less of that person. Let me not esteem them, right? And let me avoid them because they're. And I'm just surprised at that.
Yeah,
and
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, and um, you do a really good job of showing, no matter how much the story includes wrong choices, right? If you are being honest about how, yes, pain is involved, and absolutely, you're talking about some of the worst pain. Not that I want to minimize someone who's dealing with fibromyalgia, or my wife has complex regional pain syndrome. It's just extremely painful of the nervous system. The pain that I can't relate with and imagine that people go through, that's related to relationships and neglect and abuse and things, is some of the greatest pain. And even if the not being able to cope with that, or how to go down a path of recovery with that, you kind of did a really good job of explaining how you got into that, and acknowledging that it's not like you were just a victim of everybody else in the world. There's an element of taking responsibility for choices and different things like that. But it's way more complicated than just what you have so many people in society just paint it out as. Right here, that's that druggie, that's that loser. Oh, she's, stay away from them. She's just like unrighteous, right? Or whatever. Or, it's just so much more that's happening.
Yeah, it's crazy because in high schools, I start my presentations out by asking if anyone's heard the term cause and effect, because addiction is an effect. And if we can identify what the underlying causes are, identify how they're affecting us, what's hurting us, right? And be able to hit those head on, be able to start healing from those. It's not the drug necessarily that I was addicted to. I was addicted to running from the pain.
Yeah.
I was addicted, whether that be physical, whether that be mental abuse or trauma,
exactly.
or
A combination of both. It could be that you also have a pain condition going on, and that sucks in and of itself. But on top of that, I was sexually abused, and on top of that, I didn't have a father for how many years. I mean, it can be a number of different things in people's story.
Yep. And I was actually watching this podcast the other day, that said that all addiction stems from abuse. And instantly, that was not right to me. That I don't believe that, because you look at these situations that maybe you're more familiar, right, with your wife, or people that end up getting diagnosed with something. They may have a great life. They may be happy. They may be rich and have a fabulous upbringing. They get diagnosed with this, and the mental health that comes with a diagnosis, that affects your family, affects your kids, and you are required to be on these pain pills, right, to subside the pain. Like, now you're upset that you were just diagnosed with this. It's hard.
Yeah.
And you may be now not only having to help with the physical pain, but this mental pain is created in having to learn how to live with this new diagnosis, right? This new life, this change in your comfort, or your dream, your vision, right? Like people say, live for today, don't live in the future, because tomorrow's never promised. It's the same way. Like, I was that child that had this life planned out. My whole life was planned out. And I knew exactly where I was going. And I'm so far from I'm so far from where I thought I was going to be. I thought I was going to be a neonatal surgeon on the beaches of Florida. That was my plan. But addiction is an effect. And honestly, like, I feel like people complicate it way too much. Like, when so many things can be fixed, so many addictions can be avoided by just asking someone, are you okay? Like, is there something you want to talk about? And maybe you're not talking to someone. There's been moments where, I'll tell you this story really quick that I don't tell very many, but so one day I was at Bishop's and I was working, and this couple came in, sat in my section, and I used to train a lot of the people there, being a manager, and the one thing I would tell them is that there is a reason for every family that sits in your section. There is a reason God gives you every single table that you receive in that day. Either they're meant to learn something from you, or you're meant to learn something from them. That's why your paths are crossing. It's not just a job. You're not just serving them food. It may be to make them smile. But this couple comes in, and this lady was just bawling her eyes out. And her husband was sitting there very quietly. And I go up to get their drinks, and I noticed her crying, and I leaned down. I was like, are you okay? And she's like, no, just sobbing. And I look at the husband, and he just doesn't say a word. He doesn't know what to say. So I was like, what's wrong? She goes, well, I was just diagnosed with a brain aneurysm that I need to get surgery. And she was older. She was an older lady. I don't want to see an age on here.
Yeah.
She may be watching this, and I don't know. I don't really know what age she was at the time. But she was older. And she goes, and the doctor told me that I may not make it through surgery. And I look at the husband, and he just starts sobbing. Like, if I don't remove it, I'm going to die. If I do remove it, I may not live. Like, how scary of a mental game is that?
Yeah.
How I can only imagine the destructive thoughts that are going through her mind and her mental health. So I look at her just trying to think of, okay, I have got to say something to help this lady. Like, so I sit there and I think about it. And early on in my recovery, I ended up getting this tattoo. I'll show you on the camera.
I know, I love that. It's where I got mine. I saw that. I was like, that, and it's got that little symbol in the eye.
Yeah, so that's an EKG.
Yeah, you got the EKG. So
it stands for I choose to live.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's exactly what Chuck asked me that day. You know, what the hell do I have to get to do to get you to choose to live? And so I choose to live kind of became my affirmation every morning that he taught me. Every morning when you wake up, say, I choose to live. So instantly that comes into my mind. And I look at her and I grab her hands, right? She has no idea who I am. And I grab her hands and I make sure she looks me in the eye. And I go, listen, living is a choice. I go, don't listen to those doctors. Don't allow them to create this manifestation in your mind that you're not going to make it, because what I see in front of me is a strong ass woman that wants to live. And her husband just like he was like, what's happening here, you know? Yeah. And I showed her my tattoo, and I told her, you know, a little bit about where I had come from and what I was going through at the time. And I go, every single day I wake up and I choose to live. I fight to live today. And anyway, so she ends up telling me when her surgery is, and I make sure to be there. I'm going to be there. I just worked all day at Bishop's. She was getting out of surgery right where I was getting off. So I rush out of work. I run to the hospital. I grab a teddy bear from their little souvenir shop. And I stand there waiting for her to come out. And finally she comes out, and man, this emotion is just, she comes out and she's alive. And her husband gives me a big hug, and I go in there. He's like, go ahead. And I go in there and I give her the teddy bear and I give her a big hug. And I have her husband take this picture, and about a couple weeks later, I show up to work about 8 a.m. I think I was late this morning. It was like 8:10. I showed up, and my manager comes up to me, the other manager, and she goes, Malory, this table, this family of like 14 people has been waiting for you since 7:30. And I was like, what? So I end up rushing out there. And yeah, there's this whole family table created, and I realized that it's her and her husband and all her kids and all her family. And I ended up serving them that day. And as I'm at the register checking them out, the husband gives me a big hug and he goes, "Thank you so much, Mal." And I was like, "I didn't do anything. I just had a reminder that living is a choice."
Yeah.
And he goes, when she came out of surgery, he goes, "I asked her what she thought about, what she was thinking about while she was under." And she said, "The girl with the eye tattoo." And that's when I realized that the impact we can make can be so subtle. And so you don't have to be big. You don't have to have superpowers. You don't have to have degrees.
Famous.
And no, yeah, it's about connecting. It's about understanding people for their pain and helping them find a way through it. And something so simple has stamped her life forever. And today we're great friends. She lives in Mesquite, so we get to go see her all the time. Her husband rides Harleys, and so yeah, them and me and my husband have been great friends ever since. And we have this now long life friendship because of a subtle action from a stranger, and that's just something I want everyone who's watching this to hear, is that you don't have to be important. You don't have to be well known. You don't have to have a lot of money or a lot of power. It's about what's inside of you. It's about your heart, and it's about just finding that courage to say something and to speak up, right? Getting rid of that fear of being judged or saying something wrong. I say a million things wrong. I've probably stuttered a million times on this podcast and every other podcast I've been on, but it's about the message, and that's what matters. I no longer care what people think of me. It's the message that matters. See, you just stuttered right there.
Yeah, I love. I appreciate you sharing that story. Absolutely touching, and again, it demonstrates how, because even though your story, we've established pretty clearly how pain is involved and it comes in all forms, and yours is a unique story in comparison to some of these stories that we've heard, but it demonstrates that the empathy and the compassion and the things that you gained, even with the differences in walks of life,
right.
largely just don't matter, and certainly shouldn't compartmentalize who we think we're good for. Like, right. You could have easily fallen into the fallacy of, okay, well, things are a lot better for me, but my story's not in a position where I can really help this person with cancer, or the conditions that this woman had, that your friend had, that was more of a physical nature. And so you might not feel like, maybe I'll kind of shy away from that, because their reaction might be, well, that's great for you. Why don't you go help other people that are on drugs? And it doesn't have to be that way. It is an opportunity to recognize that there is such a commonality to our humanity, to our spirits, to the potential
connection, the soul.
Yeah, and
the commonality.
And we just limit ourselves, I think, so much, and have a lot of opportunity to change that. I know that the idea, I don't know whether you want to think of that of like the 80s or even today. A lot of people, I'm no professional. I work with a software company, right? And it's not like we're got degrees and all these kinds of things, but so much of society, and even though that's part of the progression, you've got professionals that, like Chuck and others, that they're doing that, right? And they're in a position to professionally help, and that's great, right? Or if whether that's going to rehab or going to getting the right pain management people, or like my wife with what she's been going with ketamine, right? There's a place for that, but what a mistake it is for us to not step up and take responsibility, and that so much of the gains that can happen for each other is doing just like this stuff in your front room. I mean, this is like a lot of what happens with therapy. Do we really need to think that the only hope for someone is if they even have insurance, that they can go and talk to a therapist? And you know what I mean? That's just limiting us. And so it's empowering to kind of just give yourself permission. You've really given yourself permission to be like, hey, look, this is not about me. Think what you want. You got to that point where it's like, and I remember kind of being that way. Nell was she was just at her lowest. And I've seen times where she's just been so low that you think she could just pass on, right? I mean, and I've just gotten to a point where I'm like, I just do not care anymore. Like you're saying, in terms of, I am going to share the story. I'm going to say, and one or two things are expected. Some people, maybe they shy away. Maybe you lose friends. Maybe people unfollow you, whatever, right? And for whatever reason, right? Maybe if they're not at a point where they're not, looking at it as a positive light and they're thinking something negative about it, right? Maybe that's judgment or fine. They're not ready to have that be that constructive place. But at the same time, what is going to happen? People are going to flood together and they're going to draw into that, and so it's kind of a blessing, right? And that, the people that are wanting that and it rings true for them, we can supplement the professionals. It does not need to just be on the shoulders of them, although they play their role in us really helping each other when it comes to pain. And a lot of that's just like you said. Of course, these things are complex, right? Of course, these things are very complex. More complex. I mean, you've kind of, articulated a lot of an understanding of yourself and the complexities and things like that. But I'm sure that you would even acknowledge that you still haven't got your own self figured out. I mean, we're a creator that is just of such complexity that it's just a lifetime. And even as we die, we're still just not even understanding of all of what God's put together, right? With all of this. And so we're still along the journey, right? And we're still learning and discovering. So yeah, I in making the complex kind of back to, like you said, with the simple, boy, the world just needs that simple compassion and that simple kindness. Every time I'm getting things wrong with my wife, it's when I'm not soft, and when I'm not, if I'm getting frustrated, or if I'm getting, if I'm starting to get impatient with something, or she, and get into it. If you're getting into an argument, no relationship is not going to have those kinds of dynamics, right? That kind of happen.
Right.
But every time I get it right, it's because I'm just slowing things down. It's not about me, and let me just kind of have that, that softness, and just be kind of tender about the situation when someone's probably already feeling bad about themselves. Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be a drug situation story. It could be that I have cancer, and what good am I in the world now? I can't be the mom. I'm not the wife.
Absolutely.
There's that commonality. And so if there's anything that, at least from, me and my kind of reaction to your message, and that is a commonality throughout all the people that we talk to, is let these times be a time of a reminding ourselves of how powerful and how much needed grace for ourselves and grace from above, and kind to each other, because it's easier said than done, and it's a simple concept that if it's applied, really really goes a long way. And wow, it's like, I'm sure the people listening to your story and some of the things that you share, I mean, it's not every day that you hear someone kind of talk about what they've gone through um, with such an openness and just yeah, what a powerful leader you are.
Oh, and just wait, we're not done with the
And
story,
yeah,
buddy. We're
yeah.
not even
So
done with the
no,
story.
and I don't mean that to kind of say, hey, in closing and we're kind of done, but I love these moments where we allow me to kind of and I know that Nell is of the same mindset, and people that are following this are like amen and amen, and you've got people commenting, beautiful meaning. Wow, this is so powerful. I think your niece is in here, Alex Simeum,
Alexis?
Alexis. Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Pain is pain, but addiction's harder to treat. You were one fighter, my friend. She's come so far. I'm so proud of her. She's doing great. Love my aunt. Um,
Aww.
Go Mal. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Rex, I think that our world is so disconnected right now, and that's why, especially with everything we've been going through, the COVID thing, people are categorizing and disorganizing people into these groups of,
there you
okay,
go.
these are
Yes.
four, these are parents, these are right. We're creating these separations and divisions based on judgment or different
Yeah.
beliefs. But I mean, you can, no matter whether your beliefs are no matter how different your beliefs are, you're still both human. Look at the commonalities. Stop looking at the differences.
Yeah, and I'm surprised. And it does. Even if there's the smallest difference, it's human nature to do that. So, like, if you, real quick, if you take the pain community and that's a percentage of people that oftentimes don't talk and things like that, and a lot of people might not feel like that they've got a friend or a relative or whatever that they can really feel like that, oh, they're a part of that. Maybe they will eventually in their life or whatever. Well, within that community, then it's like, I mean, it's been way eye-opening. There was a time when I didn't even know anybody that had a life anywhere near Nell and I, and now I'm talking to them all the time, right?
All the time.
Yeah. So but even with the differences in there, right? It's human nature to kind of get caught up on that. Of okay, well, you've got your this people, you've got your people over here, you've got the people that have brain stuff, and then people that have physical stuff, and I don't know why we do that, but you're right in that there's still that nature, and that just gets in the way of connection, right. And so we just need to challenge that in ourselves.
I gotta say one more thing too before I continue on with the story.
Yeah.
I would have these people that might be training right for work, and I had this one question come up that goes, Mal, you seem like you can connect with every table. They're like, I don't understand that. What if there's no common interest? What if there's nothing that we connect on? And it's just a table that doesn't really want to talk very much. How do you get those ones to connect with you?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna let you in on my little secret, right? The easiest way to find a commonality, to find a connection, is to create one. And the way that I do that, this is crazy how simple this is. And some of my strongest relationships have come from this, okay? Find something about them that you like. So, for example, if I go up to you, right, if you and your wife are sitting at a table and I go up to you and I go up to your wife and I go, hi, my name is Malory. I'll be serving you today. Oh my gosh, I love your shirt. And she's like, wow, thank you. I got them. Like, where'd you get it? I got it from this. You just created her walls to fall. You just created an open way of communication in simple trust is what we call it, right?
Especially if it's authentic. You're not just like, oh, hey, let me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they can see.
Yeah, you never want to lie. You never want to come up with a lie. Find something you really do like, and then compliment that. Because one, not only are you building their self-esteem, two, you're taking their natural human defense wall down, And you're opening this place of communication in just the ability to connect in something so simple. And then in our minds as humans, if we can connect in something so simple, maybe I can trust them with something deeper. And that's how rapport is built. If there is no commonality that you can see on the outside, find a commonality that you can see on the outside, you know?
Yeah, that's really good, because maybe it's a little bit challenging to find the commonalities in the inside, and that doesn't have to be the first thing that you connect with someone. Yeah.
Look at dating. The first thing you're judging is what?
Yeah.
Looks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So why not start there?
Yeah.
Like I have people comment on my hair, and even when, and it can go the opposite way too, right? Like people can be like, wow, Mal, like your hair is so pretty. Thank you. And then that just opened up the ability to connect again. It's not one-sided.
You know, so. I love that. I'm going to just share a little bit of personal that's helping my own connections within my relationships. So the kinds of shows, and you use the shirt example, right? And it's a simple example. We, after work, we have our friend that lives with us in the basement. She's single. She's got a kind of a studio apartment. And so and I'm an empty nester. I've got 3 kids that are all grown now. I'm not, makes me feel old, or I've got a little grandbaby. But so we like our wind down time, and we get a movie going or whatever. And boy, if I had it just all my choice, I'd probably be doing your Star Wars stuff and your sci-fi and all this kind of thing, right? And you know, my wife and her name's Julie, our friend. You know, they like shows like Corfu, Outlander, you know, different things like that. And wow, like, I mean, most guys probably, I would say, kind of would be a little challenged, right? To kind of like really honestly be able to like be into it and have, you know, them feel like that, hey, you're a part of that, because you're just enjoying it as much as them, right? I mean, there's just a little bit of differences between men and women, right? That's okay. But so instead of just being kind of in there and you know, making them feel like I'm just watching it because I have to or something, trying to find, you know, what's in the dialogue and the character development and stuff like that happens, and not just look at it as there's just a bunch of talking. You know, understand,
way to create a conversation.
Yeah, and find why they like it. Learn to like it yourself,
or even from their perception.
Yeah, right? Yeah, and you know, try not to fall asleep. You know, all the time. That's something I'm still working on.
Stay sitting up.
Oh man. You know, watching a romantic kind of show and not falling asleep, I you know, if you're anything like our relationship, that does wonders. And when I, you know, and so that's what I, you know, that's helping me when, you know, and I'm starting to find that I actually see why they enjoy it myself. I'm doing better at staying awake, you know, kind of a thing. So anyway, that hopefully that can kind of, you know, build upon what you're talking about. And not just with connection and relationship, but why does that matter, right? In terms of that's not what we're not wanting to kind of get off the topic. You need those relationships when you are in any story of pain, you know.
And learning how to connect allows so much opportunity for us to help others.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, to tie in, to make you guys realize we're not off topic.
Yeah, but, exactly. Yeah.
Learning how to connect really provides those opportunities when they come across, to find that commonality and to love others for the commonalities and not judge them for the differences.
Even to the extent of something as powerful as filling voids to some degree, like you were getting from your father,
right?
Like that you got from, was it Mitch?
Chuck Marshall.
Chuck, excuse me. So sometimes it's developing rapport, so that person feels like, hey, they give a crap, and
right.
And if they care, I can talk a little bit more, and I'm not casting pearls before swine, right? I'm not going to start pouring out my heart to somebody and they just don't really, care, right? It could be that, or it could be, whoa, this person genuinely like sees value in me and loves me, and I, didn't have that, and or I I'm in a wheelchair, I'm in bed most of the time, and this person doesn't think that I'm a failure, doesn't think that I, you know, you know, why don't you just check out? Because the rest of your life has no meaning because you can't do X, Y, and Z. And there are people that have people like that in their lives. I know somebody. In fact, she popped in here earlier. One of our good friends. I know that she's in a home. She has some major physical health problems that involve her spine and some open sores and things like that from past surgery that's kind of got some inflame, and people won't touch her because she's at such high risk, and so she's got open holes down her back kind of thing. And her family, her name is Andy. I'll have to send you a link so you can follow her. But her family, she's open about the fact that her family's not supportive, and that there's kind of some abusive talk to her in terms of you're nothing, and this. It's really real that's happening, and so if you can't find that within your own family, make your family whoever is willing.
They need, absolutely. There's always going to be square thinkers. There's always going to be people that, aren't capable of understanding the depth that is required to make connections and real connections and long-term connections, right? And you can't spend your life convincing them to think one way or the other.
Trying to change their mind, trying to get them up to speed with something. Yeah.
Absolutely not.
And Chuck became family. I mean, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, he is literally family, and we talk about that. People that are being benefited, we are family, right? If you don't have that family, truth, and that we're family, and we're here for you.
Yeah, and I was so blessed to have so many men in my life step up and be there for me. So I'm going to continue on to this story a little bit because it's tying
Let's do it.
Anyway, life was amazing. And this man that I'd been living with, right, over these multiple years, ended up proposing. And he not only went through all my therapies with me, he's in the addiction community, what we call a normie, someone who doesn't have the addictive thinking. He doesn't try to cope with substance. And I was so thankful for that, but also him going through therapy and going through the programs and the groups with me. He was learning all about me, and I was learning all about him from like the worst level of my being, right? Like all the negatives and all the things I had ever done.
Yeah.
He knew. And so he ended up proposing about 2.5 years into my probation with Chuck. And he ends up doing it at Tokerville Falls one day. He's like, Mal, we had built this friendship on authenticity, on truth, on just genuinely loving someone through their pain, because he was going through pains in his life too. He just was coping differently than I was. And so he ended up taking me to Tokerville Falls with all of our family. And it was one of the best days I had ever had. And he ends up saying, Mal, let's go take this picture on this waterfall. And I'm like, you're scared of heights. Like, what do you mean go take a picture on the waterfall? And we end up getting up there, and I look down, and everyone just starts gathering around for all these pictures. And I look over to my right to see what's going on, and he's down on his knee. And was I happy? Absolutely. this relationship wasn't based on codependency. I was finally had gained this independence. Chuck, had taught me by this point to be independent, to love myself. I had a self-esteem. I had a value. I didn't need this man in my life like the old Mal would have.
Yeah.
Chuck made him earn it. And that was such a beautiful concept to get to witness all the way through from the beginning to the end. But I was also extremely sad because every little girl, most little girls, right, they dream about the day they're going to get married. And I didn't. I was scared because I was missing the most important piece of a wedding. The dad to walk me down the aisle. Yeah. And my way of coping with that was, I'm never going to get married. So,
because that's too painful, right? How can I have a positive day with that being such a negative? It would spoil it.
Yeah, and it was it was resurfacing, regurgitating this pain of my dad that I had just been shoving down for so many years, saying it doesn't affect me. His absence doesn't affect me. It was affecting me. I just didn't want to admit it because admittance means I'm broken, right? Mm-hmm. There's something wrong with me. But it resurfaced, and one night I was crying on my couch, and my husband now, my fiance at the time, was like, why don't you ask Chuck? So I end up picking up my phone, and I call Chuck, and he doesn't answer. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to leave a voicemail because I want to hear his reaction to the honor. And so about a couple weeks goes by, and there's a knock on my door. My fiance and I are sitting there on the couch watching, I think we were playing Call of Duty and eating pizza or something. And this knock on the door comes, and I go to answer the door. It's pretty late at night. We weren't expecting anyone. I open the door, and there's an envelope on my doorstep. I pick up the envelope, and I open it. There's 2 papers in there. One of them is a complete congratulation and graduation of probation. It was my release from the court system saying that you are no longer on probation. You're free. The second one behind that was a full clearance of my record. Every felony, every misdemeanor, wiped clean.
What?
From my record. And I buckled to my knees, just sobbing my eyes out, realizing, the first thing I started thinking of was the day that Chuck was pushing me to go for this degree that I thought he was sabotaging me with. He had this plan the whole time. And I now realized that he wanted to see if I was willing to fight for it, despite the odds that were against me. So often, I think all of us as human beings, we always feel and see the odds against us, and that scares us. That keeps us from fighting. That we're like, no, we can't overcome this. Therefore, we're going to give up or find a new direction. But no, for him, it was fight, go for it. And I will help you. And so from that day, I was free, and I was truly free, not only from the drugs, but from my past and having a clean slate to really make something of myself. So of course I pick up the phone and I go to call Chuck. I'm like, I wish he would have stayed. I wish I assumed he was the one that dropped it off.
Yeah.
Call him, no answer. A few months goes by, and I have been calling and no answer. Finally it got to a point, like I'm not exactly sure on the timeline, but I think it was about 5 months or so, where it was getting too close to the point of my wedding. I had to find someone, and I wasn't getting a response from Chuck. And I really thought that, because I had graduated, there was a conflict of interest there. He could no longer have this relationship with me outside of being on probation. So I kind of got to this place of acceptance, that he was a chapter of my life, and that was it.
Yeah.
And he had to let go. So the day before my wedding comes up, it was in New Harmony, so we're all packing up this trailer of all of our decorations and stuff. I'm a manic mess, trying to get everything ready, and all of a sudden I'm sitting there at my vanity with my hair like half up and half down and just a mess. And my phone rings, and it's a number that I didn't recognize. I pick up the phone. I was like, hello. And it was a friend that I had met of Chuck's multiple times, you know, throughout my probation, his best friend, Bobby. And he goes, is this Mal? And I go, yeah, hey, Bobby, how are you? And he's like, good. He goes, Mal, I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but 3 months ago, Chuck was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and he's being placed on hospice. And he's asked me to call you because he wants to see you. And so right then, literally, I dropped my phone like in complete despair. I grab my purse, I run to my car. My fiance is like, Mal, where are you going? I was like, I'll be right back. So I drive as fast as I can to Chuck's house. His whole family is there, and his wife had met me a few times, but because of, you know, the confidentiality, he couldn't really share, you know, anything we had gone through or who I was. As she answers the door, she looks at me and she goes, he hasn't wanted anyone to see him like this. Like, he hasn't answered any phone calls, any text messages, but he's specifically asking for you. So she lets me in the house. I swear there was like 100 people in the living room, and not one word was being said. It was the most silent room I had ever heard. And she walks me to his bedroom, and she opens the door, and I go in, and he was not good. I sat there trying to be strong, trying not to sob, trying not to cry. And he was at this place of struggling to speak. But he was fighting so hard. I could tell that it was hard. But he goes, Mal, or he goes, hey, Mal. And I go, hey, yeah. I go, how are you doing? When I get nervous or I get emotional, I tend to, you know, lighten it by telling a stupid joke or whatever. And he goes, Mal, I'm sorry I haven't been answering your calls. And I go, yeah, I've been trying to call you to see if you would walk me down the aisle, dummy. And he's like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm not going to be able to make it. But I want you to know that you have my blessing. And that was powerful for me because, you know, again, that is a duty of a dad. He didn't have to ask, you know, anyone. I mean, he asked my mom because my mom, I have always called her ma-fa, like mother, father, my two-part parent. But to hear him give a blessing meant so much to me. And he goes, Mal, I need you to make me a promise. And I was like, yeah, of course, you know, anything. And he goes, I need you to promise me that you're going to tell your story. And of course, I tell him I promise. But at in that moment, I didn't realize the pressure of the promise I was making. And I just hugged him and just sat there in gratitude for everything that this stranger gave me as just a human being, and just understanding my pain and just wanting to see the best in me when everyone else, all of my therapists were saying, you're a lost cause, like you're not going to make it. I ended up hugging him. I was there for about 20 minutes. I knew there was a lot of people that, you know, wanted to get in there, but I knew that the second that I walked out, that was going to be the last time I was ever going to see my hero. And I ended up leaving that day and driving home. Chuck always taught me, one lesson he taught me was that, on days that are hard, watch the sun go down, because that's the day's way of saying goodbye to the sorrows of whatever's happening. And I struggled with it this night because I knew that the pain that I was feeling was going to last long after that sun set. And I ended up going from the worst day of my life to the best day of my life in 24 hours. And my wedding was beautiful. Everything went perfectly. Had so many family members there and so many loved ones. And it was such a milestone for me, something I never, ever thought I would ever get to experience in life. Still, I would still be in prison if it weren't for Chuck to this day. And I couldn't imagine how different the world would be if I wouldn't have been able to use this pain to inspire others and to relate and to make these connections, because so many people I've been able to help that I never would have got the chance to if Chuck wouldn't have believed in me. A couple days later, for our honeymoon, our families all pitched in to send us on a cruise. So as we're getting on the ship, everyone's excited and happy, and my phone rings. And I look at it, and it's the number that was on it just a few days ago. I knew it was Bobby. So I pick up the phone, and he goes, "Hey, Mal." And I go, "Hey, Bobby." And he goes, "I'm just calling to let you know that Chuck is gone."
Yeah. Oh.
And it took me about a year to really figure out how I was going to fulfill this promise. The one thing I never got with Chuck that I encourage everyone on here that's watching is a photo. I never got a photo with him.
With it? Really?
Never. Not one. And that still to this day is my biggest regret. So to all those that are watching, you never know when it's going to be the last time. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what you're wearing. Take as many pictures as you can. That's something that I do more than I should now. I think my phone like 8,000 photos over what my iCloud holds.
That's like my wife.
Literally. And it's because, I know the meaning that a photo has now. And so what I did is I ended up one night, I picked up a journal, and one thing that I feel my addiction has affected the most in me, right? Like most addicts have long-term problems. I had no teeth problems, no skin problems, none of that. But my memory is not great. And I was so scared of forgetting Chuck, this man that changed my life so drastically. So I end up grabbing this journal. I sit down one night and I just start writing down every piece of advice he had ever given me, every joke, every memory, every moment. And I realized after I filled the entire journal that what better way to tell my story than to write a book, right? To write it down.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm only one person. I can only speak at so many places or engagements, which wasn't even a thought in my mind at the time. I never pictured I would be a speaker.
Yeah.
But I realized the best thing I can do is write a book. And my husband goes, "Yeah, like we can copy a million books." So that's where my journey started. I ended up writing my story, and that's where I am today. Is every time I go speak to a high school, every time I'm on a show, every time I'm on a podcast, I am utilizing every piece of advice that Chuck has ever given me, every healing strategy and process that I'm so blessed to know about today. And I just want to share those with as many people as I can to keep this world from becoming even worse.
Yeah.
And so my book is called Inspired to Recover, an addict's journey through healing or addiction healing. And it's a first-person graphic novel, 350-page book. And I take you through everything. I take you through every emotion, every understanding. And the beautiful part is even people who have never been through addiction, I promise you, I'm going to place every commonality that I can between me and other human beings, that there's going to be a way of relation. I don't care if you've been impacted by a family member, if you're the addict themselves, if you have a chronic illness or chronic pain, you're going to find a commonality that is going to connect you to this book and help you find healing. And that is the power of truly understanding the meaning of connection. And, yeah, so every day, man, Chuck is guiding me. It's been 3 years since he's passed, and every single time I have a milestone happen, if I have, a recovery birthday, or I go, speak at a high school, or even just what's going on with my book, I visit his headstone. I sit there and I talk to him, and I explain how my day went, just like I did with the 1-minute voicemail. And I know he's listening, so it's been awesome.
Wow. Did you recently come up with the title of that book? I remember seeing a post where you were like getting some feedback, and I remember giving a comment about what I, thought it would be, and then you ended up talking about what you decided, right?
Yeah, so originally what I thought was going to be what fulfilled my promise to Chuck was that I was going to create a 90-day healing program, step-by-step guide to help identify underlying causes, how to deal with them, how to approach them, how to reconstruct that cognitive distortion, recreating your mind, rebuilding yourself. And once I started telling people, and it was going to be called The Way in 90 Days because it was a 90-day healing program, right? Once people found out that it was a healing program and not my story, they were like, Mal, I love the idea of the healing program, but we want to hear your story
as well.
I was worried because I was like, being in addiction for most of my story, there's pieces you're never going to recall. There's pieces that, you have to reach out to family, to my mom, to people, to my, husband. And I had to ask, like, what happened this day?
Yeah.
Perspective, and it's a big puzzle that you have to create and put together, and it's hard, and it took a lot of work. I've been writing it. Well, I've been writing it for about 8 months now, but yeah, so in the middle of creating The Way in 90 Days, I changed it into a graphic memoir, and now it's called Inspired to Recover, because that's what Chuck did for me, was inspired me to recover. So, and I will be publishing The Way in 90 Days probably six months after I do my actual story. Now that I've been able to build credibility and build this connection and this commonality with human beings that are struggling, now I'm going to show you how I got through it, and I'm going to do it with you. And I think that's going to be a really powerful moment in my journey so far, is just being able to see people successfully complete The Way in 90 Days and really see how it starts helping people heal from the inside out. And that's pretty freaking awesome.
Way awesome. Wow. Guys, I think that everybody can agree that we've been really blessed having you. I'm just blown away. I know Nell's going to love you. She's going to look forward to watching this on YouTube. And we'll have to absolutely do it again. The people that we interview, one of the things that we want to do is, even if it's just once or twice a year, kind of bring them together all in a Zoom call and have you all kind of come together. So, we say that this isn't just a, hey, hi, bye, right? I mean, this is really kind of a connection. So absolutely we'll be continuing to follow you and cheering you on. Look forward to the next opportunity, whether that's in person. I'd love to go. We got some friends that are pretty much family down in St. George. At the minimum, even if we're down there next, I promise, even if it's not, hey, we're going to do an interview or we're live, when we're in St. George, I will let you know, and I will try to, meet up and just give you a big bear hug and all that, so.
Awesome. Yeah. And I can't wait. I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait to meet Nell. A little secret. I haven't told anybody this yet. Okay. So you are the first.
Okay.
I have had, so many people that have wanted to get together in person. Obviously, like with what we do, we meet people all over the country, and being able to bring everyone together would be awesome. But for me, like, a Zoom call isn't enough, man. I want to meet you in person.
Yeah,
I want to connect in real life.
Yeah.
So right now, me and 2 other speakers out of Salt Lake are creating a event. I don't want to give any dates yet. I'm waiting till Wednesday to get clarification on the date.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking the end of August, and it will be at the St. George Dixie Convention Center. And it is the Healing Utah Success Summit is the name that all of our sponsors have just come up with. This event is completely sponsored, paid for by people who believe in our stories. And the speakers are awesome. So not only will I be able to be a part of one, which my story is kind of the inspiration underdog, right? But 2, one of the speakers is a hardcore criminal, did 4 prison sentence terms, got super deep in the justice system. And then the other speaker, he was never an addict himself, but he created a podcast called The Other Side of Addiction, because of his families and his wife who had struggled with alcoholism.
I think I know who you're talking about. I think he just accepted my friend request. I can't remember his name, but I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, Al Richards.
Yeah, yep.
So this has been something we haven't released to social media yet about this event, because we do obviously want to make sure that all of the details
are put together.
But being able to, it'll be about 3,000 tickets available. But this is not only going to allow all of us to connect in our stories, our commonalities, build rapport, but also find long-lasting people to be able to talk to when, some others are having hard days and individuals are struggling. And at the end, we're going to have a Q&A. Like, who do you want to talk to? The family? Do you want to talk to someone who knows about what a family feels like? Do you want to talk to the hardcore criminal of how to help your child, Or do you want to talk to someone who talks all from experience,
Yeah.
There's going to be so much power, and I'm so excited.
That's awesome.
Mark your calendar.
It's in August, right?
Yeah, better be there. I'm hoping August 20th. Don't mark my words until next Wednesday. Well, I'll be releasing it then.
I know that is around the time that we do go down. Usually it's kind of like a tradition where we go and kind of just visit them. So I'm going to, really try to make sure, it's with the Spoonie life and how Nell's feeling, it's kind of difficult. But boy, I think it's pretty plausible that we can go down there, visit them, and have maybe that be part of our events.
It's going to be so powerful. Every single person there is going to gain lifetime family and lifetime support. And that's what healing is about, So.
Well, we can't thank you enough for, we just barely, I've been following you, and so I know a little bit about you, and I just love when we meet with people. It's just like a kindred kind of connection, and it's just something that's just kind of an ease and a comfort, as if you're like in our front room. And I think that's been, kind of obvious here as well with you, and so we really appreciate. We know you're busy, and that you've got things that are going on in your life, and give our love to your husband. What's his name?
Wesley.
That's right. Yep, I think I've got connection on Facebook with him too, as well. So, handsome devil, yeah. You guys are a beautiful couple, beautiful souls, cheering you on. Like I said, you're gonna just love Nell. So, if you haven't already listened to her on our YouTube channel, if you go into our TikTok and you click on the link tree, there's our YouTube there, and that's where these are all uploaded. So when that's there, you can share, the link to this however you would like to, and part of what's there our the full Good Things Utah segments there. There's about I want to say it's 14 minutes long, but it's an audio letter that Nell recorded that talks about her whole vision with what has become, Spoonful of Sugar, and it's just really powerful. So if you want to, get to know her, that
absolutely,
and as well as
absolutely.
And then there's also, me trying to tell her story. She'd like to tell her story more kind of like with what you've done, and she would even like to write a book, and she talks about needing to do that because my version of telling her story isn't anywhere near the as good of what her memory is and things. But yeah, look into that and learn about her even more so than you have.
Absolutely, I will. And make sure you give her my love.
I will.
So much, and tell her that we missed her, and we'll have to do another segment. Yes. For sure. Anytime. I'm never too busy. I juggle a lot of plates, but yeah. I love it. It's yeah. I don't work a day in my life, so yeah. It's been pretty awesome.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Yep, we will. We will. And you go love your family and have a good night, and then we'll be in touch. I can't thank you enough.
Especially by August.
That's right. Mark, you can't put at least tentative. It's the month.
Yeah, tentative. Be like, pending information.
Yes. Watch. Go and follow her. How can people that want to follow you, what's the best way to kind of follow you?
So my Instagram is Roosh Recovery. My last name is RUESCH Recovery. Same thing with my Facebook, Roosh Recovery. And then my website, you are able to get the first chapter of my book for free right now. And my website is rooshrecovery.com. Also, you can pre-order my book. COVID has pushed out the printing. Mm-hmm. That's what we're waiting on. It's been kind of crappy, like 6 to 8 weeks right now. So it is getting to printing, but you are able to pre-order. I will be delivering most of those in person, so no one has to worry about the shipping or anything like that. Wow. And yeah, at the event, I will also be giving out quite a few for free, doing raffles for my books, my journals, and hopefully have some I Choose to Live merchandise by then too. So very hopefully cool. We can get everyone in this world choosing to live.
Very cool. You guys, thanks for joining us. Malory, we love you. Have the best night,
love
okay?
You.
Okay. See ya.
Have a good night.
Okay, we'll see ya. Bye.